Hey there, it's André, the Impulsive Thinker, and today I have Fred Feistmann with me. He's been on a few times where we had great discussions where he's actually quizzing me and getting some thoughts out of my head, and that's one of the reasons I appreciate and value his friendship, and I'm not afraid to say that. He's currently a wealth advisor to successful families, and this is what I really love about him is his past includes being a working cowboy in BC, British Columbia, a farrier. He also worked in manufacturing on the shop floor and design. And today I'm taking advantage of his unique ability, which is collect, integrate, and reframe my idea with his questions. And Fred, you had a bunch of questions for me, and I appreciate you coming on because I'm looking forward to this challenge.
Yeah, thanks for having me back, Andre. There's been a lot of water under the bridge for you, so I'm really interested to hear where you're at in your thinking.
All right, fire away. What are we talking about
Okay.
today?
Well, it seems like in following your progress that there might be a little bit of a breakthrough here in terms of bringing together all the things that you've been talking about for the last couple of seasons, and of course the work you've done personally just to get started. So I'm curious if you can speak to where you're at in the simplification process of all the things that you've thought through and for yourself and others.
Yeah, so traditionally, ADHD is identified as symptomatic in the following areas, which is inattention, hyperactivity, impulsivity, and emotional dysregulation. And that never sat well with me. So once I got diagnosed, you know me, I went head down, ass up, and researched. And then it dawned on me that these are symptoms, but the causes of the symptoms was actually executive functioning disorder, time blindness, and challenge of inhibition. And these are brain things. So I've been calling this my ADHD simplified model, and I've been testing it out with other entrepreneurs. And every time I have a discussion with an expert on the podcast, I push that theory or framework of mine. And these are the three main parts we should just concentrate on, which will take care of the traditional ADHD symptoms.
Okay, so how is it that those three, the executive function dysfunction, the time blindness, and the challenge of inhibitions, how does that shift how you think about or work through those symptoms? Like I need to understand that a little better.
Very fair question. So the core ADHD symptoms, according to the DSM or the traditional medical condition of ADHD, which I despise the term because I actually think it's a societal condition, not a medical condition, but that's another day. Inattention, hyperactivity, impulsivity, emotional dysregulation has a lot to do with your behavior and your moods and your mental health is what I saw. And there's just so many factors in there that it was hard to simplify. But my ADHD simplification model, it has everything to do with your brain, how it's wired. Not much you can do about it, but understanding how your brain works and going with it or strategizing around it was the key thing. So executive functioning, it's a mental process that enables you to plan, focus, attention, remember, and juggle multiple tasks, all right? So it has a lot to do with the working memory, cognitive flexibility, inhibitory control, so self-control. Our brain has a challenge with executive functioning as compared to other people. My working memory is poor. That's why I write stuff down. I realized this a long time ago without understanding why. So I write notes, lots of notes, so I don't forget, because if I try to remember too many things at once, things drop off. Focusing attention, there's your symptom of inattention, distractibility. So in order to effectively work with our lack of executive functioning, we have to create systems, routines, habits to make things executable and almost default thinking and doing. Now, the time blindness part, again, is also a brain thing. So time blindness, it involves knowing what time it is now, how much time is left, and how quickly time is passing. And a lot of us, we lose track of time if we're in hyper focus. And a lot of times we have the inability to recognize that time is passing, and a very badly poor time estimation of how long things take. And I forget which article it was, but it's from Attitude Magazine. But basically, time blindness is short-sightedness of the future, right? The ADHD brain time frame is now or not now. There's not in a couple minutes. Whatever I'm doing now, I can only focus on, and whatever is not now is too far in the future. And this other concept of time horizon really hit me hard. Was time horizon is how far you can look into the future and still plan and remember things on what to do. All right. And a lot of the ADHD brains is the time horizon is very short. And if it's beyond that horizon, it might as well be 1,000,000 years from now. And my time horizon, I figured out, is about 2 weeks. If it's going to be more than 2 weeks, that's next year. That's 1,000 years from now. It doesn't matter. It's so far away because it's not now. So that was a big eye opener for me for time blindness. That's why I started getting back to my calendar. I was given now permission to be okay. Like, everyone tells you you are not very good at managing your time if you need to be reminded to do stuff all the time. Right? I had that shame. But once I understood this time blindness, I said, screw it. My brain just doesn't work that way. I will use reminders. I'll have it remind me all the time. I'll have people remind me all the time. Actually, that was the way I was getting my projects completed. When I started my first engineering company, Jade Engineers, I was in constant contact with the customers, not because of customer relations. It was for them to remind me that stuff was coming due.
Got it.
Right? I didn't realize that's the purpose. That's why I was on time with everything, because they were reminding me, hey, you said this will be done tomorrow or the next week. So I was keeping that horizon always in front of me. And the last one is the challenge inhibition. So the prefrontal cortex of the brain, that's where is the filter. Anything that goes on in your brain, any reactions you have, the prefrontal cortex goes, hey, dude, let's just take a minute here and see if it's an overreaction or how we're going to deal with it or what is it really going on. And our brain is not functioning that efficiently with inhibition. That's why we got the impulsive reaction, emotional impulsivity, because our brain doesn't slow it down. Like, we feel emotions intensely, quickly, and they're raw. They're not filtered. So that's where our distractibility, that's where our impulsivity is challenged, because our brain just has a challenge inhibiting reactions, thoughts, or anything. So with that's why it requires systems and environmental control to manage our inhibition, right? Yep. I don't know if it's coming through here, but everything I talked about was about the brain, not how I'm feeling at the time, not my personality or what I think or believe. It's just, this is the brain thing. So if I can effectively manage my executive functioning dysfunction, visualize time, I need to see it. That's why I got boards all over the office to remind me of projects or long-term projects or what the goals I set for long-term. So I visually see it. If it's not there, it's gone. I don't see it. I don't remember it. And then also the challenge of inhibition, systems, and environmental control.
This is curious. So it sounds like that there was a shift in how you approached the symptoms once you disassociated the symptom from any emotion you had around it and made it into a brain thing that then you could become problem-solving orientated around.
Right, right. And that's the one thing I've always been known for in the engineering field, is going to the root of the problem, not dealing with the symptoms. And that's where I found with this model, this structure, that's the root of the problem. We take care of those 3 things, then our inattention, hyperactivity, impulsivity, emotional dysregulation is lessened. And I fix one executive functioning disorder issue, I'm actually touching inattention, impulsivity, emotional dysregulation. That's the other thing I saw. Work on one thing, it can help me with the multiple other things, the symptoms. So just working on symptoms is band-aiding the actual problem.
Got it. And so you mentioned something, I want to talk about the environmental control word in a minute, but this time horizon thing intrigued me. When you said you figured out that your time horizon is 2 weeks, what did it do for you when you understood that, when you defined that for yourself?
It explained why I developed a niche market, emergency related work, and stayed away from long-term projects.
Mhm.
My emotional setup for that, or justification not to get into new construction build, was there's too many other engineers out there. Now, there's truth to this statement. Was I figured, I did 2 or 3 new buildings, but I figured it out. It's not interesting to me anymore. Well, guess what? The ADHD part's no longer interesting. I don't care for it. I didn't want to compete with other people, so I don't want to do it. I keep going to construction site. Boom, problem solved. Boom, problem solved. Unique challenges. But the thing is, a new building construction, it's a year-long project. Just me saying it pains me.
Yeah, yeah.
And that had to do with my time blindness. Because that means because I figured out a long time ago, I would spend 4 hours a day just making sure I was on top of things and not forgetting the next step or taking care of this time blindness I wasn't aware of. So 4 hours of my day was making sure I'm on top of things to not forget, rather than executing my unique ability and my engineering services. So now that I saw that, I was staying away subconsciously from these long-term projects because it would take too much of my time to make sure I'm on top of things. That's why I like the emergency stuff or projects that are around 2 to 3 weeks long. Because after the 2 weeks, I thought it was just, I hate doing the final paperwork, but it's actually, once it's 2 to 3 weeks, I no longer am interested because the problem was solved and it's been too long.
Okay, so there's going to be some people out there that are thinking that they've got projects that are obviously more than 2 to 3 weeks long, and if they had identified their time horizon as being 2 weeks long, how do they get things done within the context of what you're talking about?
Well, I've got team members that enjoy these long-term projects. They love it. So that's them. And instead of just like, for a while, I was saying, I don't want to do it. We're staying away from it. They actually said they enjoyed it. They want to build it more. And I said, fine. I'm not in it because it's too long of a project, but either get the job, I get the project, I initially solve the problem for them, or give them a general idea where it should go and identify any challenges that they may have. Then I'm out. I'm no longer involved until they need me to change path or deal with unique situations. So having the right team around you to take time with these long-term stuff. Like, I enjoy getting these types of projects. It's just a win. I got a new build, but I don't want to do it. And I stayed away from that, which affected the growth of my company. And now we're actually we're probably 10 years behind, because if I would have seen this before, which I was not diagnosed at the time, we'd be in a different position right now. I'm a bit upset about that, but in the end, I'm not pissed off because it is what it is. With this new clarity, I'm giving the team a lot more freedom to just do what they like best.
Well, and it sounds like by naming this thing time blindness, like giving it a name, you are now able to communicate that to the team and help them understand how you're going to function with them and in a project, so you're not being pulled into things that are outside of your
Right.
unique ability, or kind of running counter to your model.
And also keeping it interesting, challenging, novel, and urgent, which keeps it, that's what motivates the ADHD brain, is those 4 things. This is the nervous system, the ADHD nervous system, according to
Cool.
Dr. Dobson. Yep.
Have you had a chance yet to test the idea of time blindness when you talk to other people and see if they have a sense of their time, like 2 weeks, 4 weeks, 1 week?
Yeah, everyone's different. Like,
Yeah.
our entrepreneurial coach, Dan Sullivan, I talked to him about this. His is 90 days. A
Right.
project that has 90 days beyond that, don't point continuing. He loses complete interest. So right now, my ADHD Transformation Journey Program, I've got 3 entrepreneurs. They got differing time frames, but just having the discussion about time blindness, it just opened their eyes. Just like, whoa, like now they're starting to see how time blindness affects them and how they should visualize time and deal with it differently, right? My calendar is full of colors. Every color has a unique statement. I don't need to know who I'm talking to or what the appointment is or the block is. I just know yellow means I haven't confirmed it, but I kept it there to just keep the time. I got in-office meetings and out-of-office meetings, 2 different colors. Travel's gray. So if I can just take a quick color glance, I have an idea what the week's going to be. So,
And how does that relate to time blindness? It sounds to me like that's a blend of environmental control and time blindness, but tell me what you mean by all that.
well, the time blindness, but the yellow is like, Fred,
Yeah.
we're going to talk, in 2 weeks, you're going to be in town? Okay, fine. Morning, do you think? Okay. I would say, fine, I'll try and remember that. All right. And the next thing you go, hey, Andre, I'm here in town. Do we still have time? Like, shit, I already booked my time out. I'm swamped. So now what I started doing, I go to that Tuesday now, I block it out, Fred in town, question mark, yellow. So when I'm reviewing the next week, the week prior, I got a yellow. I need to confirm if this is true or not.
Got it.
Right.
Got it. Okay. I'm curious about environmental control. You mentioned that a few times. Tell me a little bit more about how that fits in this whole model.
Well, ever since I was a kid, watching people's behavior, I always say I was a student of human behavior since probably 4, just watching and observing how people react and how in different environments people behave differently or react differently with the same stimuli. Like, or, one example is, why do you react this way from this statement when this person says this, but somewhere else that another person says the same statement, but you're okay with it? And usually has to be the environment. And environment to me is the physical location, the people around you, and the type of work you're doing, or whatever is influencing your mental health or your emotional side of your brain, or your mind. Actually, I prefer to use mind. And having the right environment dictates how you're going to react and behave. Right? They always say, if you're the 5 people you hang around the most, people can guess who they are, type of deal. If you're around negative people all the time, you're going to be negative. If you're around positive people, be more positive. Like me and you, we've decided to stick around and be with people with a growth mindset, not a scarcity mindset. And then I start to notice that different environments sets my brains up for different things. So my office, I got no distractions. When I'm in my office here, my physical office at my desk, I'm to do work. At home, I have an office, but that's to do house stuff. And I actually got a different area in that office where I do reading. So that kind of stuff is the environmental control and the people that are around. And at the same time, like, why, if you, like, I worked with this with one entrepreneur, I always get frustrated with people. Every time they go, that's when impulsivity is similar to me. If I'm in a room with people I'm not appreciating or not enjoying, my impulsivity, verbal impulsivity goes a bit crazy. And so now we're looking at that environment. Do you have to go there? Yes, no, I don't want to. Don't go anymore. Or I have to because it's family or something my spouse wants me to do. But knowing that you're going to that environment, now let's assess it. How can we put in checks and balances of if you're going to be impulsive or not? But just being aware going into an environment you're not comfortable in helps you self-regulate or be self-aware, and then create little systems to get in place. So like for me, if I got to go somewhere with my wife and it's a group I'm not too fond of, it's 2 hours max or an hour max, and we're out no matter what, in, out. Because I know beyond that, I'll get snarky. So I'm still doing something. Environmental control has a lot, even with your computer, right? Right now I'm talking to you, Fred. The only thing that's open is Zoom, the recording device, and Google right now because I got points that I want to follow.
Right.
And everything else that can notify me or distract me are off. Right? If I'm sitting down to focus and do work, my computer's off. That's another thing. My phone's gone, turned off. Environment control.
Well, and it seems to me by being able to, again, name it and talk about it, what you're doing is giving yourself and others a focal point to anticipate something ahead of time and say, what strategies am I going to use to keep this on the right path?
Yeah, I like that word. It is all about anticipation. So if you can anticipate something's happening or may happen, you can react quicker. Right. I'm actually gotten to the point where my body reacts first. And that gives me an early warning sign that I can escalate to whatever symptom that goes on.
Oh, very interesting. Well, on the counter side, I have a place, as you know, that I go where I do a lot of my thinking creative work, and I can tell you it's about a 40-minute drive. And as I drive out, my body actually changes. I feel layers coming off, and it's nothing I'm actually trying to do. It just is. So, and it's something I've just become aware of over a period of time. So my question to you is, how does that awareness of what you're talking about on triggers for environmental triggers or what have you, how has that bubbled to the surface? Like what's caused you to have that ability to now see that?
Well, the other challenge too with the ADHD brain is transitioning from one task to another. And we need time to do in between. And what I've really discovered is with my hyperactivity, I'm not too sure for the non-hyperactive ADHD brains, but I'm starting to get the sense that it's the same. Just physically moving from one place to another is my transition, and then to another environment gets me into a different framework. So when I started doing engineers, I was in my basement. I could not separate the two, home and work. There's no way. So I finally said, I've got to go, quote unquote, to work now. So I physically leave the house. Like you, the drive, I start to think when I had a half-hour commute, I never realized I was actually planning the day on the drive. When I got to work, I was ready to go. And then on the drive back, I was transitioning out of work and getting all that emotional regulation or just the calm down. The work calmed down when I got home, then I was calm. So what I realized, physically moving from one environment to the other, I went to work, that's work. Now, if I want to be creative at work, I got my office to be executing stuff, and then I'll physically go somewhere else to be creative. Depending on what I want to do, it might be the coffee shop, it might be the library, it could just be the conference room. But physically moving and getting out into a different environment really helps reframe the brain going, hey, you're somewhere else. You're somewhere else now. You're doing something else. Let's work on it.
So it's time and space.
I think it is both. Yep.
Depending.
Yep.
So challenge of inhibition as it relates to environmental control. Yeah.
Yep.
Is there a relationship there, or that is, I guess what I'm thinking about is this environmental control thing actually has roots in all three of the parts of your model.
Correct.
So when did which one showed up first? Was it the driver to figuring out these three, or were these three?
No, I think the environmental control is something I had always done and followed. Yep. I just innately knew that was key to everything.
Right.
But not understanding why or how. So if I look back, everything I did was I tried to control it. It got to the point where I tried to control it so much that I was rigid. I wouldn't allow things. So people were like, saying, you're controlling and dominating. But it was for me to control the environment so I didn't get surprises and I can execute. And then with time, the environmental control was very key, because how do you control your environment? You need systems. How do you get systems? You need routines. How do you create routines? Well, you need habits to work on. And then that whole thing comes together. And then you got what I've also called the ADHD structure. So control your environment, have your routines, have your habits in a nice little triangle. So based on the simplified model, figure out how your brain works. You can create your ADHD structure with those 3 points. And then you've got a really good control of your ADHD symptoms, quote unquote. I hate using the word, but I like to convert. I say they're impairments. Everyone's got an impairment, different skill sets or talents. Our impairments is brain-based. So you know it, work around it, find shortcuts, find ways to manage it, and execute in your unique ability or what you do best.
Yeah, I really love this. I think the three components of the model allow people to anchor to those, like time blindness, for example. You automatically want to go to a definition of that for yourself, and really working on tailored things for yourself instead of, focusing back on the symptoms. You're focusing on the progress. So I know we got to wrap this up, André. How would you say your thinking's changed from before I started asking questions to right now?
Well, I like the anchor concept. I just drew it down here because the other thing I really realized over the last couple months was not Russell, one of the Dr. Barclays. He's hypothesizing that ADHD is actually an executive functioning deficit disorder. And I do believe that's at the top of the food chain. So I just drew an anchor. I put executive function at the top of the anchor. And then the two hooks out is your time blindness and inhibition. And I think if you don't have this in control, it anchors you down. Then we get into the traditional symptoms. And the issue is not the symptoms. The world is still looking at those symptoms, but not checking out what is the cause of the reason. And this is what I see. The reason, the cause is the brain's just not wired for it. That's why I say it's a societal condition. We're trying to measure ourselves against the society norm. Our brain's not wired for it. This is how it is, and work it.
Why play their game? Play your own.
That's what I say. Be your game. Play your game.
That's awesome, André. Thanks again for having me on. It's super exciting, and these three things I'll be thinking about a lot more.
Well, the one thing I do want to ask you before we go is what 2 or 3 insights of the chat today?
Well, I think the thing that really excites me is just by having names around this, I can like these 3 things, I'm automatically thinking about the same things for myself. Like, what is I'm naturally curious about, well, what is my time blindness? And is it different in different contexts? And then when we get to context, it's about environmental control. So I think some of these things I'm already using, and now you've opened my eyes up. So I'm going to see things far differently as I walk through my days and weeks than I did before this. So I probably have a better answer for you as to what my insights are, but this is a great lens.
Yeah. And I think that's a great point I want the listeners to understand too, is what we're discussing today is it affects a lot of people with ADHD more so than others, but it still affects everyone in different ways. Like people's time blindness, neurotypical, it's varying, right? They also have their own executive functioning challenges as well, and challenges of inhibition. It's just ours is more pronounced. And the more and more I'm talking about to people is I'm getting very frustrated that, oh, I got ADHD or this is the challenge for me. But at the same time, these challenges that we do have, other people haven't, and we got to stop. We can't forget that. And that's my whole thing. ADHD just explains to me why things are versus a ticket out of things, or to justify or compare, I got a bigger challenge than you, which I hope that came out sort of clear, because I really hate people comparing pains. But to me, my pain is very painful. Your pain is painful to you, or your challenges, and vice versa. So, everyone's got challenges, and just understand it is key. So once you understand it, you can act on.
100%. Yeah, it's exciting. I think this is a great lens.
All right. Thanks, Fred. And to you, the listener, I'd like to hear from you what you think about this ADHD simplified model and your time horizon. And the question I have for you is, what are your executive functioning challenges? What is your time blindness or time horizon? And what are your challenges for inhibition? So if you got some answers or some thoughts, I would love to hear from you. So thanks again, Fred.
All the best, André.
All right. We'll talk to you soon. Bye now.
Yeah.